Howdy. Today I'm going to show you how you can bend lines and morph shapes in SVG using GreenSock. So you'll be able to make demos like this one you can see on the screen. So we're going to start in Figma by drawing a line. So let's grab the line tool, which is this one that looks like a pen. And we're going to hold shift so we get a straight line. And about there looks right. And that's 220 long. So we can see here with the height, but I'm going to change it to 300. And that gives us a straight line. Now, to create a line that we can bend or like manipulate, what we do is we actually create a duplicate. So if we duplicate that line and then lock the first one, and now we can manipulate the second one, and it's like what we're morphing from and then to, and that creates that sort of illusion that something is bending because we're actually morphing the shape. So with this duplicate, I'm going to rotate it. And let's say to there, and I'm going to move it, and Figma should snap it. There we go. And that's our second line, but we could already achieve this. This wouldn't be too tricky. We'd just use a transform origin and just rotate it. So if we grab the, well, no, if we double click the line and then grab the bend tool, we can then actually bend the line so it looks like it's sort of been moved from that point and it's bending out. And let's just say, let's go with there. That looks good enough. And if we then duplicate this line and flip it horizontally with this menu here, and then we can match that up to the top. There we go. So once we've got all these lines, then we're ready to put them all together. So if we select all of them, and we need to unlock this line, so grab all of them, and then we can frame that selection. And let's export it. And we're going to export it as an SVG. And we'll just export it into this little demo that I've put together, or this demo set of code. And we're just going to call it lines. And we're ready to hop into the editor. So at this point, I've got the SVG in a browser, and you can see we have all 3 lines. And I've applied some real minimal styling here just to size it to 50 vmin so it would scale up and down. But the important part here is that we're actually going to get rid of these 2 lines in the SVG. So if we comment them out, and we're just left with this starting line, the straight line. And what we're interested in is the definition attribute on these extra paths, so these extra lines. And I'm assuming this will probably be the left one. So we're going to take that string out, and we're going to hop into JavaScript land. And we're going to say that this is, let's call it the left bend. All right. And we'll have a right bend as well. And the right bend will be the other path definition string. So let's take that. And we can save, they'll come back, we'll see them. But we actually don't need them anymore. We can get rid of them completely. And let's actually thicken up our current line. There we go. And I'm going to give it a rounded line cap as well. So we can use line cap round for that. Cool. And in our style, I'm just going to set the overflow to visible, and the important is to keep CodePen happy when we export this out. So really good spot now, and we're ready to actually morph the line, and this part is really cool. So this is going to be pretty quick to get this done. So I've pulled GreenSock in using SkyPack. I've set up the register plugin, and I've pulled the morph SVG plugin from my local files. Morph SVG plugin is a GreenSock plugin that's for members, but you can use it on CodePen, and I will put this demo in CodePen in the description below, so you can go and play with all the different plugins. And there's also a CodePen that has all the URLs for the different plugins, so I'll put that down below as well. But the first thing we need to do is register the plugin. So register the plugin, and it's register plugin morph morph SVG plugin. Cool. And then what we need to do is use gsap, and we're going to use gsap.to, and I put a class name of lines on the SVG, but we want the path, so our selector will be .lines path. So if we do gsap.to and we do .lines path, and let's say a duration of 1 second. So if you've not used gsap before, the to is we're going to tween or animate to from the original state. So we're going to whatever this state is to a new state, and you use a target as the first argument. So here we're using .lines path. So we're saying a duration of 1, and then we're going to say morph SVG, and we're going to say to left bend. And we've saved that and run it. There we go. Our line morphed and bend, or bent, as we intended. So if I do a yo-yo on that, which means that every time the tween repeats, it will go in the alternate direction, and then I set a repeat of -1, which is infinite repeating, we should see it bend in and bend out, which is really cool. And there's not a lot to that. We just created our SVG in Figma, and now we're able to bend those lines in and out. We can take this further, so we could change the easing, so we could do like power 4 .in, and that will give it sort of a different feel. And then maybe we apply a repeat delay, so it kind of waits when it gets out. So when it goes out, it waits, then it comes back in, goes out, comes back in. There's quite a few things we can do with this. What if we wanted to go to the other side though? So we might do something like take the timeline, or create a timeline even, and we could start by going out, and we wouldn't we repeat once to go out, then come back in, and we'll change the repeat delay to like 0.4, and we'll change the duration to 0.5. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come in, and we're going to go to the right bend, and we're going to repeat that one once, so it'll go out and then back in, and we'll set the same repeat delay, and we'll do the same duration. So what happens if we do that? So it goes out, comes in, goes out, comes in. And then we could do the same where we just set this timeline to repeat infinitely. So it goes in and out. And now we have like this bending string. If we wanted to do something kind of more fluid, like a swing, we can actually cut out this repeat and start from there, start from like this side on a left bend and go right through to the right bend, and then just repeat that motion. So something like that would probably look like, let's try it. Let's say we're going to set, so we're going to use a different method, set, and we're going to set the original path, and we're going to set it to left bend. So if we just run that, it should just be set, yeah, just set to the left. And what we can do here is we can say .to, and we'll just move it to the right bend. So we'll say morph SVG and right bend. And it will just keep going back and forth. But what we can do is if we put yo-yo true in there, you see how it's kind of swinging back and forth now. But it's almost missing out the middle. So what we can do is let's bring in the straight, and let's keep a record of that string. And then we're going to say .to .lines path, and then morph SVG straight. But now it staggers across, which really isn't what we want. We want it to be fluid. So what we can do is if we do ease none. On all of these. Now we have this kind of swinging string that actually goes in and out because we've changed the ease. What if we want to attach something to the end of our string or line that we're bending? So here I've got an ellipse and it's at the end of a line and I've grouped them. Now when you do this kind of thing in SVG, the idea is to kind of plan it and create sort of duplicate elements. So what we're going to do is I'm going to duplicate this with Command D, and then I'm going to lock the original, and then I'm going to rotate our second one. And then if we snap it back to the top, or get it roughly in place, that looks pretty good to be fair. And at this point it's important to take note of what rotation has happened there. So we've rotated by 30 degrees, and what we're going to do to make this ellipse swing out is duplicate this group and rotate it. So we'll actually rotate the group and then bend this string. So what we can do is if we take our string piece and we bend this ever so slightly, so we're just going to bend it a tiny bit, maybe more at this end. We could go even more at the top end. Yeah, maybe that looks good. And then if we grab the group and we duplicate it, and then we're going to flip it so that we have our other side, and we just need to make sure that we line them up. Once we have the states we want, we're good to go. So let's frame this all up and we can export it. And if we hit save, we'll actually see that all of our lines are currently morphing along the same path because of our selectors. So that's fine. What we're going to do is we'll turn off the animation for a second while we work out which pieces we need. So the first path and the first circle are going to be the center one. So they're the ones we need. They're the ones we're actually going to move. I'm going to give this a class of line, and let's give this one a class of ball. Do you know what? Actually, we'll call it string. There we go. And then we know that these two sets of path and circle are the other two. So if we comment them out for a second, we're just left with the center piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to group these two with a G tag. So I'm going to give it the class of, let's go string and ball. And now they're in a group. And if we go back to our GSAP, what we're going to do is we're going to do a timeline where we set string and ball to rotate -30. And then we're going to go to string and ball, rotate 30. If we watch that, oh, it's not quite right. And that's because the transform origin isn't correct. So to correct this, we can use gsap.set, and we'll use string and ball as the target, and we'll set the transform origin to be 50%, 50%, 0%, which would be 50 across, and at the top, if we set that, now we get that swing motion that we expected. And we'll set the ease to none, and the ease to none. And if we play that, there we go, we're just swinging left to right, which is fine, but now we've lost the bend of the string. So to get that working, what we're actually going to do is we're going to hide this string. And to do that, we can use gsap.set, and because we used a class of string, I'm just going to set the stroke to none. And now our ball still goes on the same trajectory, but we don't see the string. And the reason I've used that is because it was easier to grab a group than work out an offset transform origin. So if we go back and we bring these back in, so we can see the ball is moving correctly between the two states, and what we need now is we need a string that morphs between these two strings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the string, and we're just going to give it the class name of actual string for now. and that will morph between these two paths. So we don't actually need these circles anymore. They were just there to help us when we were creating the SVG. And if we remove that, now we can see that we have the free string states. And we're going to use the same technique as before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the definition strings out of our SVG. So I'll just make that a little bit bigger so you can see it. So I'm just taking the definition string and I'm just copying into these two variables, left and right bend. And what we're going to do is we're going to update our timeline to morph this center string from the left into the middle to the right with the same ease. And to make things easier, let's start by adding a rotation or a rotate for string and ball, where we set it to rotate 0 with an ease of none. And that shouldn't change anything. That still looks good, although it slowed it down because obviously we've added another animation here. But now we're ready to start morphing our string. So let's start with set, and we'll do actual string, and we'll set it to morph SVG, and we'll start with the left bend. So if we do that, and what we can do if we go back here, we don't need these two anymore because we've got the paths that we need. And if we save, we'll just be at left, which is fine. And then we're going to do an animation. So we'll do 2.actual string, and we use morph SVG. And at this point, we're going to go for the straight. And this is where we can use GSAP's position parameter. So we're going to use the special chevron character, and that tells us to start this animation at the beginning of the previous part of the animation. So it should go to the straight at the same time the ball does. So if we save that, and that's fine, we've just got them round the wrong way. So the rotation that we're doing here with -30 and 30 is currently round the wrong way. So if we switch that to 30 and -30, now it will be the correct way. But the string isn't kind of connected to the ball quite right, and that's because we're missing the ease. So if we set the ease and we put none here, now it'll match up. And all that's left to do is the same animation, but at the end, but the same position parameter, and we're just going to say to right bend. And now our string and ball are connected, and they both go along on the same path. And the reason the lines are showing on top is purely because of the order. So if we just move that underneath, there we go. There is a ball swinging on a string with SVG and GreenSock, and it really didn't take too much to get that happening. So that's it. That's one way you can do the string and ball connected animation. Here we've looked at a way where we're making a ball rotate in a group, but we're actually rotating the group to make it look like the ball has that transform origin, and we're morphing a line to make it look like there's a slight bend when it swings. And to do that, we hopped in Figma and we created these different states. We planned ahead of how it was going to look. And then when we hopped into actually using GreenSock, we tied it all up by grabbing variables for the different states of our string, and then we animate to them around this rotation of the string and ball group that we created. The other little parts that we looked at that would be worth looking at is the position parameter in GreenSock, which is really clever for positioning tweens in a timeline. And here we're just using the chevron, the less than chevron, which says start this tween at the start of the previous tween. So they start together. Yeah, and that's how we got to this string and ball. I'll leave demos below, and if you liked it, hit like, and yeah, if you got any questions, let me know. Stay awesome, people.